just dropped off by the post person is the first two entries into the 7 Years War battle system. This is two brand new games that have come out from a French publisher who I think is new on the scene, Ad Hoc Games. The designer of these games, I think, is also the publisher. And these were just recently released earlier this year as part of this new 7 Years War Battle System series that he is working on. It looks very interesting, and the most interesting thing about it, first of all, this cover art is amazing, but the most interesting thing about it actually is the way that these are shipped. He has come up with these foldable boxes that ships both of the games in sort of a flat pack instead of a... like a box, I guess, to save on shipping. And so everything comes in Ziploc bags, and then you put the box together yourself following these instructions, and then you've got two boxed games. So the two games in the system are the Battle of Torgau and the Battle of Minden, and I just love these covers. They're so colorful and evocative of the period. And the game system actually looks quite nice as well. These are two battles from the 7 Years War, obviously, 1759, 1760. And there's just a lot of interesting stuff around this. Now, one of the things that I have seen when I was researching these titles was that the rules, there are some people who have some complaints with the rules as written, and you'll see as we go through these packages how much supplementary material there is, not just rule books, but historical information as well. But there was some dissatisfaction with the rules. The designer has actually clarified some elements that were arising with players of this earlier this year. Has just released, like as of a couple days ago, version 2.0 of the rules for this system. So I will be playing at least one of these games for my exploration of battles from the Age of Enlightenment that I'm doing right now. And this is ultimately what made me sort of pile in some more games that I wasn't going to. Originally, I was just going to play a few and not even make it a thing. But then I saw these were coming out, so I decided to give them a shot. And the reason I decided to give them a shot was because they look really interesting. They're really beautifully produced. And also, the counters are quite interesting, which you'll see here in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and, like, through the magic of editing and post-production, assemble these boxes so you can see what it looks like. And da-da, there you go. We've got both boxes put together. Each one took me probably about 30 to 40 seconds. Not very hard. They essentially assemble themselves. And it does come with some instructions when you get these games about how to put them together. So that's really appreciated. The boxes are nice. They're kind of like a shiny... I don't know how you'd say it, like a plasticized kind of cardboard. So think like thick player aid material. I mean, you know, there's some give to them, but they're pretty sturdy. They actually remind me a lot of the old boxes that the Gamers games used to come in. I think my copy of Baltic Gap kind of has this feel to it, at least this folding style to it, where there's like, you know, folds on the top and bottom. So this is not unheard of in the board game space. But these, you know, as long as you're not like, you know, sitting on them or stepping on them, they will stand up to some punishment. And they've also got a back as well, and here we can see the Battle of Torgau in the map. I really like the visual style of what I've seen in this game. It gives you a little bit of you know, background on what's going on there. Here's some of the unit counters. And then this is where the game, and I'll show these more later, where it gets really interesting. You've got these brigade counters where you actually, I believe, you put the actual battalion and regiment counters on the brigade counter, and then this is, while they are together sort of in line formation, more or less, this brigade maneuvers as one large counter. So that's going to be really interesting to see. This is what really appealed to me about checking out this system and got me into researching it. And here's another one here, the Imperials. Like, you know, how is this game enforcing linear warfare doctrine? And it appears to be that when you've got these all of the units of a brigade together side by side, you actually maneuver them as a brigade, but they can also be maneuvered independently as well as a smaller unit. So we'll have to see how that works out. Yeah, so you can see the unit size are the brigade and battalion. So we've got the brigades and the battalions, about 100 men per strength point, around 240 yards per hex. So this will be the smallest scale game that we've seen in sort of all the games that I've been playing for this era. The last, the least amount, I think, was either Camposanto or the Bataille de Louis XIV, where it was 275 yards a hex. So we're talking about a little bit smaller than that. It looks like the game is also equipped to be played in teams if you want, 2v2. And it's a one map sheet, 5 counter sheets that are 5/8 inch, which is quite nice. 3 rule books, and there's some controversy there, and I'll get into that. 6 player aid cards, 2 playbooks, and some orders and organization sheets, which is quite nice. The designer is Frédéric Aubert. He is also the principal graphic designer and also the owner of Ad Hoc Editions, I believe. So, complexity. This looks like it's well, I can't really read this scale. Complexity is the 6 the complexity. It looks like it's a 6 in complexity, 7 for solitaire suitability. That is right in my wheelhouse. So we'll see how that goes. Here's the Battle of Minden. We'll get the map out. You can see some of the artwork there and some of the counters here. Looks like we've got some Prussians in the Battle of Minden as well. Okay, let's get these open. So to start off, we've got 2 baggies. This baggie contains the map and all of the documents. Here is 7 Years' War's Battle System Introduction Booklet. This is kind of an overview. Really like the period artwork being used here. Just the feel of the production of this game is clearly someone who appreciates the aesthetics of the era. So we've got a bunch of booklets in there. We've got the map and we've got the force display. So I'll open those first. Okay, so we'll start with the introduction booklet. I believe this is just kind of like high-level concepts of the game. Here's a bibliography, all the research that went into the game. Here's some talking about sort of just like the makeup of the armies and what have you, fighting doctrine. Here's sort of the scale of what was going on. Look, clearly a lot of research done here. Artillery fire, talking about maximum effective range for solid shot versus grape shot. So this is not, this is a very historical look at this topic, which I think the designer is very passionate about. Here we have kind of a table, he calls it an index, but it's a table of contents about everything. So it's talking about an introduction to the system, the game components and concepts behind the game, what all of the counters do. Now keep in mind, this is not the rule book. This is kind of a reference to all of the pieces and, you know, like sort of how the pieces interact with the rules. Talking about the fire combat chart and so forth. So it's dual column. It's laid out pretty nicely. It looks like there's a lot of space here. So it's not a very long booklet, this introduction booklet. I think it's about 16 pages. Yeah, so a lot of text, but I'll be curious to work my way through there. Here's weather, which is interesting that the weather effects are here. So then we come to the detailed sequence of play. This is a much bigger book. On the back, you've got the sort of sequence of play chart. This is going to be kind of how you play the game. And I know that there's been a lot of mixed opinions about... A lot of illustrated examples, I'll say, too. A lot of mixed opinions about learning the game this way. The designer felt like having an introduction to the system and a reference to what's going on, and then having a sequence of play that kind of talks about the rules and how you actually play through a turn was the best way to go about it. I can't comment because I'm about to learn the system. And again, I am going to be using version 2.0, which I believe there's a 2.0 for each of these that have been released, so you can print those out. He also made the actual print files, like with the backgrounds and borders and stuff, so if you want to get version 2.0 professionally printed, you could do that. This art, very familiar. This is the cover art that was used for Battle of Campo Santo from Parabellum magazine. That was the cover of the magazine, actually. So yeah, I can't really say much about how the game plays yet, but that's why we're going to play it. So you get these 2 booklets. Then you get what is, I guess, a table of contents index for different rules. So if you want to go consult the booklet, that's single-sided. That's interesting that that's separate. Here's another detailed sequence of play for the other player. So each player gets one of these if you want to give each player one. Here's the playbook, the Allied playbook for Minden, and contains the order of battle. Looks like the setup, the scenarios, the setup. For each of the scenarios. It looks like there's a number of scenarios in here. It's really interesting. Here's some, looks like, yeah, historical background. So let's start at the beginning. We get some historical background about the Battle of Minden, some period maps here. Really nicely done. Like, if you're a fan of the history and a fan of the era, there's a lot of material to dig into here, which is really cool. A lot of historical background. Okay, so then we come to the scenarios. So we've got Wangenheim versus De Broglie. Yeah, so you see the setup here. This is a small, looks like a small engagement scenario. Yep, and tells you kind of what order the units are in. We have got, it looks like the different wings, what leaders commanding the different wings. I'm really curious what these diagrams are all about. This is scenario 2. Yeah, so it looks like different parts of the battle. It would be a good way to learn the system, I think, playing one of these. Ferdinand versus Contades here. And then we've got the full battle scenario, which uses the whole map, and you can see the lines here. And I believe these diagrams, so there's a setup booklet for the French as well. I believe the same historical information, but I believe the diagrams are flipped. Let's see. From what I recall seeing, ooh, slippery. Yeah, so here is the same scenario setup, and it looks like... Yeah, so you can see that the perspective of these two setups, it just shows you, it looks like the setup for the side that you're playing. So there's not like a global, because really what's going on is like this. We flip it over. This is the same map, I believe. Yeah. And so it shows you the setup of your units and only, which is interesting. So each side is setting up their own thing. There's not like a global setup page that shows the whole map. You may like that, you might not like that, I don't know. Here's scenario 6. Here's a 7 o'clock start. This one is a 4 o'clock start. So maybe some maneuver before you get to the battle. And here's a free setup scenario that starts at midnight. That's probably sort of an approach to battle scenario, perhaps. And then here is the order of battle, complete with the uniforms and the flags of each of the units and under whose commander. So if you really like this stuff, there's a bunch of it here for you, which is kind of cool. You know, it's all about the ostentatiousness of the uniforms. So there is a French playbook and a Allied playbook for this battle. Really striking images on these books. I really like that. Here's the French terrain effects table. This leads me to believe that each side has its own terrain effects chart, which is kind of cool. And here's all of the different units. So if you need how effective they are and what formation they're in, that's there. Here's the French relative firepower table. I have no idea what this is. Looks like distances based on the size of the guns and firing infantry and what combat effectiveness is. Here's the Allied. Are these different? Let's see. Is the Allied effects, terrain effects, different than the French terrain effects? I don't see any difference. You might be able to see them because you can pause the video, but I don't see necessarily any difference. I think it just might be for each player, which is interesting. Okay, then we've got the relative firepower tables for the Allies, and on the back of this, the fire combat results table as well. Here's the charge opponents ratio table. So when you're charging, a lot of interesting tables on this game. Charge results table. And a sheet of rules reminders, which is nice. Road march, formations, facing. Looks like you face both hex side and hex vertex leaders. Nice to have a little rules reminder sheet here. I wish it was a little more organized rather than just straight text, but I guess maybe we'll see how that plays. All right, let's get to the visuals in this package. So here is the map, and I believe this is taken from an actual period map with the hex grain put over it, from what I understand. It looks like it's been upscaled a little bit from its original resolution. You can't really tell on camera, but it is a little fuzzy. Some of the details, like the city here, some of the terrain is a little fuzzy when you look at it up close. I don't necessarily think it's not going to impact playability, but certainly you can tell that it's like taken from an actual document, I believe. And apparently the system is going to have this style of map for all of the games in it. So you have to really like the historical period and its visual style. But the colors, I think, on the counters are going to pop on it because of the muted tones here. So I'm not too concerned about it. The paper is pretty thin. It's like a very thin paper. So you're definitely going to want to put plexi over this and not play directly on it. And so, yeah, it's not, I guess my initial reaction to it is that the map is probably the least visually appealing thing about the whole package. But we'll see how it looks when we get some counters and we get some gameplay going on it. So this is Minden. This is the Minden map, and the map for Torgau is going to look very similar as well. I'm just really concerned about how thin the paper is here. It is not... This is the one part of the game where the production is maybe lacking a little bit, is the thickness of the map. We've also got these order of battle sheets, which, as you know, if you're a fan of Napoleonic era, you've got to have these, right? So here we've got His Britannic Majesty's Army, Ferdinand and Brunswick, the different commands there. We've also got, what is this? We've got the Wangenheim Corps and Cavalry. These appear to be Imperials, Bavarians. Lieutenant General von Wangenheim. Must be Bavarians. Major General von Grothausen. And then we've got some independent units down here. So you can see all the counters and how they line up. And then, of course, we've got the army of the King of France here, under Marshal de Contade. Looks like some Saxons, So yeah, you can see all that in there. And then here's another sheet for the Duc de Broglie, independent units, Piedmontese, Prince Camille. Yeah, so these are quite nice to have. You can get the, if you're a fan of the pageantry, you can get these out and put the counters on them. And see, it actually probably helps you see how the command ranges and command radiuses work and who's subordinate to whom. That's always usually the command and control is big. All right, let's go to the counters. All right, here we go with the counters for Minden. You get 5 counter sheets, and the counters are very nice looking. You've got the uniform and the flag and the color bar for the different units. We've got orders chits, and as you can see, they just kind of generally fall out. As I set it down, counters came off the back sheet. So what's interesting here, wow, these come out really easily. What's interesting here also, a reason I took a look at this game seriously is because these counters appear to be manufactured out of the same material and method as the Three Crowns games. And I don't know what the relationship is between the designer here and Ad Hoc and Three Crowns, but I do know that on the Ad Hoc website, you can buy Three Crowns as titles. So I'm not sure if they're in a business partnership together or perhaps one was manufacturing counters for the other. But, if you see, look at that. Look at how easily these come out of the sprues. And no clipping required. There's no nibs. So they remain perfectly squared. They're extremely thick. Very impressed with this, as I was with the Three Crowns titles. So they just literally fall out like that, which is so nice. So we're going to get this organized. It does come with some bags and get this all boxed up. I'm not sure if I'm going to do bags or possibly counter tray. Counter tray is probably the most effective way to do this. But yeah, you get 5 sheets. Here's just popping all out. I don't really want to disturb them because then I'm going to have a hell of a time ordering them up. Yeah, so here's some of the brigade counters. So these popped out right here. So you can see here's a brigade counter on the front, Wissenbach, with what battalions belong to it. And when you flip it over, this would be, I guess, a column march. So it would be moving this way versus arrayed for battle, which is kind of neat. I'm really excited to see how this works. Yeah, and we've got, there's a lot of counters in this game. And we get a very similar thing going on for Torgau. As you can see, it looks like the Imperial Army is already starting to charge out of its sprues. But again, I think 5 counter sheets and a really nice looking box. And the map is going to be the same visual style as well, if I can get all of this documentation. So yeah, so 2 games here from the 7 Years' War Battle Series. I'm going to get one of these at least to the table and give it a play with the new updated rules. And I'll give you my thoughts. But I'm very hopeful that perhaps this is the series that is going to scratch everything that I've been looking for the Age of Reason that isn't Bar.